The Shark Deck.
A lot of strife today, and I'm not just talking about the idiot who scratched up my car bumper in the park and didn't even leave a note. Come on, man. Hi, Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. All right, let's start with Hasan Minhaj. I think he blew his shot at The Daily Show would be my take here. The headline from the AV Club: Hasan Minhaj admits to fabricating alarming details in his stand-up specials. His exaggerated claims included experiences of racial profiling and his daughter possibly being exposed to anthrax. I'll tell you the story, but the AV Club correctly points out, when you see a comedian, it's a given that everything you're hearing may not literally be true. There are stories that have been tweaked and embellished for laughs after being told hundreds of times. They gave an example. If you found out John Mulaney never actually encountered a man who professed, "I'm homeless, I'm gay, I have AIDS, I'm new in town," in that order, it would still be an effective bit of comedy writing, but wouldn't you be a little disappointed? So what's going on here? In a New Yorker article, Hasan Minhaj admits that he fabricated details of some of the stories he tells in his specials Homecoming King and The King's Jester. Okay, comedians do that all the time, but the issue here is, as the AV Club puts it, the fabrications weren't purely for laughs, but were specifically relevant to his experience as a non-white Muslim growing up in America. The character Brother Eric, a supposed FBI informant who infiltrated his family's mosque, was completely made up. Similarly, Hasan made up the story of having to take his child to the hospital after she was exposed to white powder they feared was anthrax. Minhaj told The New Yorker, "Every story in my style is built around a seed of truth. My comedy Arnold Palmer is 70% emotional truth, this happened, and then 30% hyperbole, exaggeration, fiction. In his view, the punchline is worth the fictionalized premise." The AV Club comments, "Yet, there's not a punchline to, my daughter was exposed to a substance that could have been anthrax. In this case, the exaggeration doesn't make the story funnier, it's just more upsetting." In a statement to the New York Post, Hasan Minhaj says, "I use the tools of stand-up comedy, hyperbole, changing names and locations and compressing timelines to tell entertaining stories. That's inherent to the art form. You wouldn't go to a haunted house and say, 'Why are these people lying to me?' The point is the ride. Stand-up is the same. You get to say whatever you want on stage, and we have to live with the consequences. All my stand-up stories are based on events that happened to me. Yes, I was rejected from going to prom because of my race. Yes, a letter with powder was sent to my apartment that almost harmed my daughter. Yes, I had an interaction with law enforcement during the war on terror. Yes, I had surgery so we could get pregnant. Yes, I roasted Jared Kushner to his face." Sources close to The Daily Show have confirmed to Rolling Stone that Hasan is currently one of 3 top candidates for the job, but the source says no deal has been locked in with any talent. I'm wondering if he blew it here. I'll jump ahead to a story I'm going to do later about Michelle Wolf, who, and I'll do this later, but her relevant quote: "For the longest time, especially with Jon Stewart, The Daily Show was factually accurate. And even though it's a comedy show, it tends to be more factually accurate than any news show." So I'll come back to that. So I don't know if they can give him the chair here. I get The Daily Show's a comedy show, but now I'm picturing like a Brian Williams scenario. He might have blown this here. And if not Hasan Minhaj, then who? All right, next strife article from The Verge. Told you last week that Theo did that tirade about a podcast company. There's been a lot of coverage on this. The Verge writes, multiple creators who have left the podcast network Cast Media say the company owes them significant sums of money. Comedian Whutney Cummings told Hot Pod that she believes Cast Media owes her at least $350,000 for ad sponsorships, though the amount could be more. Cummings wrote in an email, "The whole thing is a nightmare." Theo posted a 10-minute video on YouTube on September 6th. The title of that, "This Man Defrauded Our Podcast." He alleged that Cast Media owes him and a group of other creators over $4 million. In an email to Hot Pod, Theo said that he personally knew of 6 different creators who were owed amounts that ranged between $1.5 million and $600,000. Vaughn said Cast owes his show an amount that's in 6 figures. As I recorded on Saturday, a very, very fast-moving story. This from the New York Post. Rusell Brand, accused of raping and sexually assaulting 4 women, including a 16-year-old. This according to a joint investigation by the Sunday Times of London, the Times, and Channel 4 dispatches. On Friday night, Brand got in front of this by releasing a statement. Let's listen.
Now, this isn't the usual type of video we make on this channel where we critique, attack, and undermine the news in all its corruption, because in this story, I am the news. I've received 2 extremely disturbing letters, or a letter and an email, one from a mainstream media TV company, one from a newspaper, listing a litany of extremely egregious and aggressive attacks, as well as some pretty stupid stuff like my community festival should be stopped, that I shouldn't be able to attack mainstream media narratives on this channel. But amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. These allegations pertain to the time when I was working in the mainstream, when I was in the newspapers all the time, when I was in the movies. And as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play?
Whatever's going on, Deadline reports Rusell Brand appears to have parted ways with his UK agent. His profile is no longer on the agency's website. Elon Musk commented and said, well, of course, they don't like competition. I met Rusell Brand once. He was upbeat, personable. We had to record some promos. I remember him doing them quite well in like one take, maybe two. And I want to tell you he did it in one take. That's it. That's all I know about him. Spent, I don't know, 10 minutes with him, maybe? Seemed nice enough. The Independent reminded us of this story, which I had forgotten. Rusell was a video journalist for MTV in 2000. The gig was short-lived because Brand was fired after arriving in the studios dressed as Osama bin Laden the day after September 11th. I was kind of busy on September 12th, so maybe that's why I don't remember that one. The Independent adds, his stand-up shows acquired a reputation for chaos as he would often perform while high, quote, releasing locusts, cut up pigs' heads, smashing up dead mice and birds with a hammer, and then throwing them into the audience, according to The Guardian. What? Rusell was scheduled to play Wembley on Saturday night. All right, keep an eye on that. All right, that Michelle Wolf story, she was profiled in Rolling Stone. I'll pick at that over the next few days. She discussed Dave Chappelle and said, I think people really miss a lot of what he's saying. He says it very clearly in his one special. Why is it easier for Caitlyn Jenner to change her gender than it was for Cassius Clay to change his name? I think that spells it out right there. He wants everyone to be able to live the way they want to live, including black people. Time and time again, we see that as a country, we literally don't want black people to live, and we don't do anything about it. They try to act like Dave is some sort of villain when he's not. He's a hero. He's fighting for his people. But there are black trans people. He's not saying those people shouldn't exist. He's just saying that he should get to exist too. Michelle Wolf discussed Louis C.K. and said, Louis, I feel, is the only one who actually admitted to anything or apologized. So we can go back and forth about how good or bad his apology was, but I don't think you're ever going to have an apology that everybody's going to be happy with. He's the only one who did that, and it seemed like he got punished for most of it. He apologized and he wants to make things better, and instead people were like, no, you can't. There's no way for you to make things better unless you do this and this, but nobody said what this and this was. Nobody said what he could do because nobody agreed on what he could do. And she spoke about The Daily Show and kind of back to Hasan Minhaj. Michelle Wolf said for the longest time, especially with Jon Stewart, the show was factually accurate, and even though it's a comedy show, it tends to be more factually accurate than any news show. I think there's a way to do that, make it funny, and give people the information they want and need without coddling one side or the other. I think both sides are doing a terrible job right now and a huge disservice to the people. This is the trick of nations for as long as time. You keep the two sides fighting, so they're too busy to go after the people in power. More strife. Steve Martin has responded to allegations made by Miriam Margolyes, his co-star from 1986's Little Shop of Horrors. She has a new memoir in which she writes, I was hit all day by doors opening in my face, repeatedly punched, slapped, and knocked down by an unlovely and unapologetic Steve Martin, perhaps he was method acting, and came home grumpy with a splitting headache. Steve Martin was undeniably brilliant, but horrid to me. Steve Martin addressed this in a statement to Deadline and said, when I first read Miriam Margolyes' pejorative account of our scene in Little Shop of Horrors, I was surprised. My memory is that we had a good communication as professional actors, but when it's implied that I harmed her or in some way was careless about doing the stunts, I have to object. I remember taking, all caps, extreme caution regarding the fake punch, the same caution I'd use with any similar scene. She assured me she felt fine, and we did a few successful takes and stopped. There was never any physical contact between her and me, accidental or otherwise, in this scene or any other we shot. Gutfeld says Conan is wrong on Trump and comedy. I've been picking away at that Conan O'Brien interview with Kara Swisher. It seems the mainstream media picked up on the Trump part in which Conan said, you can't parody something that already has that crazy irregular shape. It's not possible. So I always thought that when Trump came along, what a lot of people have to revert to is, doesn't he suck? I hate that guy. He's an a-hole. And those aren't jokes. Well, Greg Gutfeld has chimed in. On Friday's The Five, Greg said, this is the funniest time to be alive. Wokeism is like the biggest, funniest thing ever. Joe Biden is a perfect target. Hunter is a perfect target. Nancy Pelosi, the city's descent into the criminal force is a target. Climate change wackos, gender Nazis, all of this stuff is ripe for comedy. But for these guys, it's Trump or nothing. Instead, you have comedians who are actually crying on air or doing propagandizing videos for vaccines. That's why I think late night isn't chaos, except here. The knives are out for Fallon. They're going after Bill Maher because I think he's doing the right thing. He's saying we're hurting all these other people, the caterers, you name it, whatever, because the writers are upset. I like Conan, but he's a little late to this party. The Brady Bunch house has sold for $3.2 million, but the asking price was $5.5 million. The house was built in 1959. The exterior was used for the credits in the 1969 Brady Bunch. In 2018, HGTV purchased the house for $3.5 million and remodeled the exterior and interior to look exactly like it did in the Brady Bunch. The new owner plans to use the home for charity events. Her real estate agent says it was a nostalgic purchase she just had to have. Some downsides: fireplaces and some appliances and fixtures are decorative only. A new book by Mike Bridenstine looks at Chicago's heyday as an incubator for stand-up stars. The Chicago Sun-Times took a look at the book, and they say the list of talent from that time in the late 90s and early aughts is outstanding. The talent includes Kumail Nanjiani, Pete Holmes, Hannibal Buress, Cameron Esposito, Dwayne Kennedy, TJ Miller, Kyle Kinane, Matt Bronger, Brooke Van Poppelen, and others. That is a killer list. I remember there were a bunch of comedy festivals in Chicago in, like 2005 or so. And yeah, I saw a lot of those people in small places. It was a great time. The Perfect Amount of Wrong will be out on September 25th. Mike says, I wanted to write something that was authentic to the scene and was coming from someone in the scene. Back then, the Lion's Den and other local outlets imposed zero guidelines on material, which encouraged adventurous stand-ups. There was Bill O'Donnell, who would routinely induce vomiting on stage, and Chet Lactatius, whose signature bit ended with the comic in a full Ku Klux Klan outfit. A bunch of comedy clubs had closed in the late 90s. Zanies in Old Town survived the bust to become the only game in town. The lack of opportunities at Zanies started a groundswell of ambition at the local level. The setup for those shows was less than ideal. The Lincoln Lodge cash register was cacophonous, and the servers chatted at full volume. At the Elevated, comics had to contend with the roaring of the red and brown line train zipping by just outside the bar. Bridenstine says, one time somebody said to me, why are Chicago comics louder on the mic? Because we were shouting over a bar for years. We turned chaos into charm. Some of the anecdotes from the book. One night at the Lion's Den, Nick Vatterott, also a great Chicago comedian, hid in a storage closet through 20 performers to play a marionette pupper in Brady Novak's act. Kumail Nanjiani went up at Chase Cafe for an audience of 2 and killed by throwing a bouncy ball around the space. And one time power went out at the Elevated's anniversary show, so the host lit performers with flashlights rather than cancel the show. That's your comedy news for today. Tomorrow should be more fun. If you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it, will ya? And I'll see you tomorrow.